My name is Maria, and I want to share my powerful testimony about recovering from a debilitating condition after years of suffering. I'm originally from the East Coast, but I relocated to the West Coast to join a traveling ministry focused on outreach and evangelism. For most of my adult life, I had been remarkably healthy without any significant medical concerns. However, shortly after I joined the ministry in early 2021, I began noticing unusual symptoms during our first major outreach tour. These tours involved months of continuous travel, preaching, and community service. The symptoms started subtly. One day, while I was carrying my Bible and some lightweight items into my accommodation, my arms suddenly gave out and I dropped everything. During planning sessions for outreach events, I would experience severe discomfort in my limbs that brought me to tears, forcing me to lie down. Looking back, these were clear warning signs. But at the time, I dismissed them as minor issues, perhaps dehydration or exhaustion from the demanding schedule. It took nearly 12 months before I sought medical attention. The turning point came during a tour when I was driving a vehicle full of ministry students and colleagues. While I was behind the wheel, my vision suddenly failed and I experienced what doctors would later identify as a mini-stroke. Unable to see the road and losing control of my body, I managed to pull over safely. This terrifying incident, the first of 3 similar episodes I would experience, finally convinced me to see a doctor. Even after such a serious event, I still hoped for a simple explanation like a vitamin deficiency. Unfortunately, the reality proved far more complicated. My initial blood work revealed markers for an autoimmune condition, but with countless such diseases existing, doctors couldn't immediately identify which one. I was referred to specialists who could run more comprehensive tests. When I received this news over the phone, I went home and broke down completely. I remember sobbing while questioning how I would maintain employment, have a family someday, or live a normal life. It felt like watching my former existence die before my eyes. This was in 2021, and things only deteriorated from there. What had been occasional brain fog and limb discomfort gradually increased in frequency, from once weekly to several times weekly to eventually every single day. The decline was gradual but relentless, leaving me nearly housebound. My medical journey took me across multiple states and even internationally. I flew to Texas for consultations, visited numerous practitioners throughout my state, and even traveled to facilities in Mexico. I was desperate for any diagnosis or treatment that might help. The results were consistently discouraging. Most doctors either admitted they had no idea what was wrong or claimed they could help for thousands of dollars in specialized supplements and treatments. One practitioner proposed a treatment plan costing $10,000 monthly. Sitting in that office, I wept, knowing such an expense was impossible. I felt utterly without options, watching my ability to care for myself slip away. By 2023, despite still lacking a definitive diagnosis, doctors confirmed my condition was autoimmune-related. The frightening reality was that some autoimmune diseases can be life-threatening, leaving me uncertain about my long-term prognosis. The mental and emotional toll was crushing. I stopped allowing myself to dream about the future because hoping had become too painful. My social life evaporated. I rarely left my room in bed. When friends wanted to spend time together, they had to visit me in my bedroom. The emotional exhaustion was particularly difficult. For those who have experienced chronic conditions, I explained, it becomes incredibly draining to keep seeking prayer and attending gatherings when nothing seems to change. Recovering from repeated disappointment became its own burden. By 2024, my condition had severely worsened. I could barely drive for 10 minutes without breaking down. I had completely lost the ability to run and could only walk for 30 to 40 minutes maximum. The cognitive symptoms were particularly distressing. Severe brain fog made it difficult for me to find words. My memory had significantly declined, and I had lost the ability to read effectively. My quality of life had drastically diminished. Near the end of 2024, my mother, who was involved with an online faith community, sent me a ticket to a special worship gathering. I had other plans that evening, a concert I had been looking forward to, but I decided to pray about it. In that moment of prayer, I felt strongly that this event was something I needed to attend, as if there was a specific purpose for me being there. I attended the gathering with friends, though I started the evening in considerable pain and struggled to concentrate during worship. That morning, my mother and I had been discussing whether it was time for me to return to the East Coast and leave the ministry. As I stood in worship, I asked directly whether this was the right time to go home. I felt an overwhelming sense of divine presence and received what felt like a clear answer. This wasn't how my transition would happen. I wouldn't simply fade away in disillusionment. When the time came for change, it would come with clarity and vision, not defeat. Then I sensed something else, a commission to pursue my calling more vigorously than ever in the coming year. Despite my physical inability to literally run, I committed myself fully to whatever was being asked of me. The worship experience was profound, giving me the clarity I had desperately needed. After worship, the speaker transitioned into teaching about spiritual themes and led everyone in communion. As I stood without anyone touching me, I suddenly felt what I described as heat spreading throughout my entire body. I had never experienced anything like it. The sensation grew more intense until I was sweating, simply standing with my hands open. The speaker then began speaking about specific conditions, mentioning various ailments that people in the room were experiencing. Then he said something that stopped my heart. "There's someone from the traveling ministry here who has a chronic condition that appeared suddenly. You're meant to be made whole. You're already feeling presence like heat. You've been wondering if you'll ever travel and minister again. May you be healed so you can continue your calling." I immediately knew he was speaking directly to me. I had been sweating before he even said those words. I began crying, overwhelmed by the realization that this moment was for me. The speaker then asked if anyone from the traveling ministry with a chronic condition was present. I wasn't entirely certain it was me, despite the powerful experience I was having, but I raised my hand tentatively. The worship leader noticed me, and the speaker called me forward. When I came up for prayer, the speaker, who knew nothing about my specific diagnosis, placed his hand on me and prayed a simple but powerful prayer, referencing another person's healing testimony and declaring that nothing was too difficult. He then went through a list of symptoms I was experiencing, speaking against each one specifically, though he had no way of knowing what I was dealing with. He ended with a simple declaration of faith. "I believe it. Let it be done." As soon as his hands lifted from me, I walked back to my seat. One of my ministry leaders immediately asked how I felt. I began weeping and said something I hadn't been able to say in 4 years. "I have no pain." Standing there for the first time in years, I was completely free of pain. My leaders, who had prayed for me countless times before, laid hands on me again. One of them looked at me intently and said, "This is the moment. You're healed right now." As they prayed, I felt what I described as water flowing up and down my legs repeatedly. One of my symptoms had been blood clotting in my legs, which had caused the mini strokes. I could physically feel something being washed out of my body by what I believed was divine presence. That night, I went home and immediately texted my mother. I got healed. I know it happened. I went to sleep and something remarkable occurred. I woke up at 8 in the morning. For years, I had been unable to wake before late afternoon because mornings were when my symptoms were most severe. But that morning, I woke early with abundant energy and literally jumped out of bed. I stood there testing my knees, moving around, hardly believing what I was experiencing. I had no pain whatsoever. I ran into the common area where my roommates were and excitedly told them what had happened. We all cried together. I was so energized I suggested going rock climbing or taking an intense cycling class. My roommate wisely suggested I just try living a normal day first and see how things went. That day, my roommates were taking their child to an animal park about an hour away and invited me along as a test of my healing. Normally, an hour-long car ride would leave me bedridden for the rest of the day. I got in the car and made the full journey without any pain. I talked the entire drive, crying intermittently, amazed at what was happening. At the park, we walked around for 6 or 7 hours, an impossible feat for someone who could previously only walk for 30 minutes. I experienced no discomfort the entire day, and the full drive back home remained pain-free. That's when I truly knew the healing was real and complete. The next morning, I woke up still half asleep, but noticed something unusual. I felt comfortable in my bed, like I could lie there peacefully for hours. Suddenly it hit me. I wasn't in any pain. I began crying tears of gratitude, thanking God that I could lie in bed comfortably, cook breakfast, wash my face, all without my legs hurting. 5 months have now passed since that night. I went back on tour with the ministry for 3 weeks, my first tour since being healed, and I experienced no pain throughout. I preached for the first time since my healing, Going from 4 years of constant pain to experiencing none felt like overwhelming relief and peace. I explained that autoimmune diseases essentially cause your cells to attack each other. For 4 years, I had woken up every single morning feeling my entire body tense, inflamed, and swollen. To suddenly wake up one morning without any pain, I had actually forgotten what that felt like. I couldn't find better words to describe it than simply relief. Looking back on my journey through suffering and into healing, I reflected that the character of the divine remained consistent in both seasons. Whether sick or healed, I experienced the same faithfulness. During my illness, I was met in my suffering. Then I was healed. And now in my restored health, that same faithfulness continues. The nearness of spiritual presence didn't differ between suffering and healing, because that faithfulness never wavered. This became the defining truth of both seasons of my life. For anyone experiencing chronic illness or suffering, I offer this advice. Stay committed. When you're in the midst of chronic pain and suffering, disappointment is inevitable and valid. But you cannot allow yourself to remain in that disappointment. Giving in to self-pity or believing things will never change can prevent you from continuing to seek help and hope. I emphasize the importance of persistence. Keep attending gatherings. Keep asking for support. Keep reaching out. I compared it to the biblical story of a woman with a bleeding condition who had to push through crowds to reach a healer. That woman was determined, and I encourage the same determination. Don't let moments of disappointment harden your heart. Healing can come suddenly. You never know the day or hour. Throughout my illness, people repeatedly told me, "There's a date on the calendar for your healing." And they were right. There was a specific moment, a specific night when everything changed. I genuinely believe healing is available now, not just in the past or distant future, but today. For anyone watching or reading my story, I believe there's a date on your calendar too. Whether in sickness or health, divine presence is near. If you've been encouraged by my story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more testimonies of hope and transformation. Share this with someone who needs encouragement today. Have you experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember, your breakthrough could be just around the corner. Don't give up. Keep believing. And thank you for watching.